It's the citizens versus the aristocrats.
The fact is, we can solve the problems together.
Coming up on City Inside Out, Sally Bagshaw is running for a second term on the Seattle City Council, and she's facing an opponent with a very different point of view. Sam Bellimio is an outspoken critic at public meetings, using the podium to rail against City Hall.
You're horrible at what you're doing.
My biggest goal is to stop the government abuse.
We work to make sure that people have a fair shot.
Incumbent Sally Bagshaw defends her track record on the council.
What I've done is bring people together, listen to people's points of view.
Which candidate will you support for the Seattle City Council?
Our society is failing and there's no one standing up.
What I want to be doing is making sure that we are connecting.
Bagshaw and Bellimio debate next on City Inside Out. Welcome to City Inside Out. I'm your host, Brian Callanan. City Council member Sally Bagshaw faces a familiar opponent in her bid for re-election this year. But this race is far from politics as usual. Her challenger is Sam Bellimio. He formed the group Stand Up America a few years ago and frequently testifies at city council meetings because, as he sees it, our city is not listening to the average person. Bagshaw says she's not only been listening, but getting things done in her last 4 years in office. And up against an opponent with no major donors or endorsements, she has her sights set on earning another term.
I'm mad as hell.
You could say he put the bellow back in Bellimio.
Number 3 is the Parks Department.
The man challenging Sally Bagshaw for her city council seat is proud
I was expressing my concerns.
to be loud.
My wife always tells me to quiet down.
But Sam Bellimio says if his voice rises a few decibels, it's only to wake people up to what he calls a failed political system in our city.
We're collapsing right now, and I'm yelling because I'm concerned. There's no one waking up. If you guys just sit there silently and allow this to continue, you're at fault.
You're cleaning up around the camp, outside.
Bellimio is the only candidate challenging Bagshaw for her position 4 seat, and thus was able to skip the primary election this past August. He has no major donors for his campaign, nor any endorsements. He says he hasn't looked for any.
If people understand what I'm speaking about, they'll vote for me. If they don't, hopefully they'll call me or email me, and then I'll explain to them my point of view.
Anytime that you've got an opponent, you take it seriously.
Bagshaw might not always agree with what Bellimio is saying in council meetings.
No.
But she says she's up to the challenge for her second term.
It's an honor to be a council member, and I want people to know that I ask for their votes just as if I was running against the toughest possible candidate.
Bagshaw has raised more than $100,000 for her campaign, and she's endorsed by 7 of her fellow council members, the King County Labor Council and CASE, the Political Action Committee of the Seattle Chamber of Commerce.
I've worked really hard for the last 4 years, and what I've done is bring people together, listen to people's points of view, find the common ground, and get stuff done.
One of the most infamous sparring matches between the two candidates came back in August at a Parks Committee meeting, which Bagshaw chairs. Bellimio used a vulgar term as an acronym for freedoms you can't kill.
Pretty much you can't take our freedom.
Turn off the microphone, please.
After Bagshaw ordered the microphone turned off, security escorted Bellimio away from the podium. He says that isn't right.
It was her decision to impose her discretion onto me. She's unwilling to open the dialogue. And so whenever someone says something against the government or government's officials' point of view, shut the microphone off.
Sam, you know what you are doing. I am not putting up with that kind of language here.
Bagshaw says she was trying to keep the peace and keep the meeting focused on parks and not let it get sidetracked.
Sam, you're not talking about parks matters. You don't have the right to be rude.
Bagshaw says she's kept her focus in the past 4 years on legislation to help Mohi move into its new home, establish neighborhood greenways to connect our city with walking and biking paths, and streamline the management of Seattle's community centers. But that's not all.
What I believe completely is that we're all better off when we're all better off.
She's also supportive of raising the minimum wage. She says if workers and employers can agree, a $15 an hour wage could be a possibility.
I think that that's something we can shoot for, and again, I want to make sure that labor and business are working in a coordinated way.
Bellimio has not offered a plan for Seattle to reach higher wages, But he claims his opponent can't even relate to the idea because she, like all the council members, is paid $120,000 a year.
They're making so much money. How can they know how it is for us to live? We are struggling and they are just watching us and studying us.
The two candidates also clash on affordable housing issues. Bagshaw is supportive of building smaller units, such as micro apartments, to help keep rents down.
We need to go back to some of the early ways, whether it's rooming houses, whether it's more people in single rooms, but have shared bathrooms. We really are going to have to do something like this to make sure our city's affordable for everybody.
Bellimio says the city gave away its affordable housing in the redevelopment of Yesler Terrace. His plan, while not specific, has a simple message.
How do we get low-income housing? By creating low-income housing. How do we do this? By doing it.
Now what's left to do is vote.
Things aren't good right now.
Will it be the candidate who says he's fighting the upper class,
This takes a village.
or the incumbent who says she wants to make Seattle livable for everyone?
It's not Sam Bellimio versus Sally Bagshaw. It's the citizens versus the aristocrats who own the system that we're in.
We're all interconnected. It doesn't matter whether we're making no money, whether we're making a ton of dough. The fact is, we can solve the problems together.
And we are joined by Councilmember Sally Bagshaw and Sam Bellimio. Thank you both for being here. We had a coin flip before the show. Sam's going to go first. The question, Sam, I want to ask you is this. I want you to talk about your qualifications for this job and why you're running without referring to your opponent, if you can, please.
Well, I mean, I'm a citizen, and that's my qualification. I've ran an organization called Stand Up America for many years now. I've been advocating for the people. I'm the voice that's coming in there. I mean, that propaganda piece you had at the beginning of this just illustrates that our TV station for Seattle is run by the government. Our government's run by aristocrats. It owns the corporations and the businesses. Our society is failing, and there's no one standing up. I'm qualified because I'm saying something. Your package said I have no idea. I've been giving ideas. You haven't been interviewing me or asking me. If you work for the people, you would have been at the council meetings asking me, why are you saying these things? Instead of telling the people on this TV that I have no idea of what to do next.
Okay.
We get on a train, get point A to point B, you have to get on the train. I'm talking about starting that change and doing that change.
Okay.
So I'm qualified for simply speaking up for the newer generation that has no voice right now because we have the old aristocrats in there controlling the dialogue.
We'll talk a little bit more about those ideas coming up. Thank you very much for that. Sally, you're up next. Why are you running for a second term?
I have enjoyed very much what we've been able to accomplish by doing things together. And I have a legal background. I am a certified mediator and facilitator. And what I've done on the council is to bring people together, not just within my colleagues. As you know, we've got a very strong council right now, but working with the mayor's office, working with labor and business and our environmental communities. There's a lot to do. We've got a lot done. There's more to do, and I look forward to continuing for 4 more years.
Okay, fair enough. Sam, I want to focus on a point that I've heard you bring up a lot, which is you say the Seattle City Council is not listening to the public, not giving people enough time to say what they want. Let's say you're elected. You're a city council member. How would you run a meeting?
Well, first off, they haven't done their town halls that they're legally required to do by their own resolution.
Okay.
In 2009, they stopped. They were supposed to do it. In 2011, I told them, you're not doing it. 2012, you're not doing it. In 2013.
So you'd like to have town hall meetings?
So hold on
okay.
1 second. It's not just the town hall. It's the fact that they're not doing their job. They hold their meetings at 9:30 a.m. and 2 p.m. when most citizens are at work. We need to hold meetings on off work hours as a per usual practice, and not when they have their business buddies that can come and attend.
Okay.
And that's the problem, is that we don't allow citizen dialogue because the process doesn't allow it. They even do it on their news feeds when they do their newsletters, to tell people to come in. They say, hey, we're just having a meeting. No, I want you to come to the meeting. Tell your friends to come to the meeting. Proactive. Our council isn't proactive, and they don't allow for citizen dialogue.
Okay, in terms of those meetings, you'd like to have them in evening hours, it sounds like, so more people could show up. And in terms of allowing that dialogue, I know that's a big part of what you talk about too. Do you want to set no time limits on the people that are speaking, or how would you do it? I just want to talk about the mechanics of it.
The mechanics of it is doing it. The problem is that the meetings, you get 2 minutes to speak, right? And so the meeting, let's say, is because of Seattle City Light. They get to sit at that table for an hour and a half. We had the May Day protest this year, and the Civil Rights Committee was meeting the very same day, and they didn't bring any of the protesters in. They were just talking about appointments, while they had police on horseback and bikes and police cars, allowing them to clash, the police department and citizens, instead of facilitating the dialogue. And we can't facilitate the dialogue until we get the aristocrats out, the people that live above the means. I mean, $120,000, most Seattleites live at around $40,000. I think lowering the salary down to $40,000, having them struggle with us And $40,000 is a really hard income to live here, especially with rising rent prices.
Yeah.
We're pricing citizens out, and it doesn't matter to the aristocrats.
You're covering a lot of ground I know we're going to cover later on. But Sally, I want to talk about this issue. And I know you and Sam have tangled on this whole concept of listening here and responding to the public. Can you give us an example of a time in your last 4 years on the council where you have listened to some viewpoints that were different than yours and somehow responded to them, maybe even taking an unpopular stand on an issue?
Well, let's just talk about this past Saturday.
Okay.
I mean, that was, 4 days ago.
Uh-huh.
Sally Clark and I went to Holly Park.
Okay.
And we met at the Holly Park Library. And we do this regularly. Sam doesn't know because he's not there.
Okay.
Last week, I had 5 different community meetings in the evenings and on Saturday. So what we do is work during the day at City Hall, and then we go on outside our City Hall borders to various neighborhoods at least 4 or 5 times a week.
Okay.
I think it's important to understand that last week I was in Lake City and Georgetown and Holly Park and out in the northwest sector. This is what we routinely do so we can hear what the people have to say. We listen and we don't talk, and we exchange ideas.
Okay. Can you tell me, though, about taking in some of that talk, some of the things you're hearing, and how that's affected a decision perhaps you've made over the past few years?
Sure.
Maybe some of the talk you're hearing is something you don't necessarily agree with.
Yeah.
How has that worked into a decision you've made?
Here's a good example. South Park, for example. You know, South Park was really hurting, and they were hurting because the bridge closure. They were hurting because they feel beleaguered. There's a group that was focused on the Duwamish. My folks that I deal with in Seattle Public Utilities had informed me about how much money they were going to be able to pay for cleanup. And that was after maybe 10, 12 years. And I had worked on this project when I was in the prosecuting attorney's office. So I had a different point of view. I went to South Park, met with the neighbors at the river's edge, and learned how much it impacted them, that the river was not getting cleaned up fast enough, that sure enough, we were going to be doing some dredging, but they wanted to see more than capping in places, but actual extensive dredging, to be able to hear how that impacted them and the tribes who want to eat the local fish. It really did make a huge impact on me. And so I have been working really much more closely with the Department of Natural Resources, with King County, and with our neighbors down in South Park to say, how can we do this differently and better?
Okay, and Sam, I know you want to respond to that, but I have to wait for just a sec as we keep going through here. Sally, I want to explore a little bit further this idea that you talked about in the setup piece there, this whole concept of we're all better off when we're all better off. Help me understand, if you can, some of the programs you would like to work on if a council member, if you're reelected, to try to help make Seattle more affordable.
Sure. So that phrase, I give credit to Eric Liu and his book, Gardens of Democracy. And I really do believe that when people are able to earn money in a job that they're working at a job that's dependable, at a family wage job, they've got money that they can then turn around and spend in our community. I also believe that the $15 an hour minimum wage is something that we need to work toward, working with our business community and with our labor and with our employees. You know, just like we did with paid sick leave, that was an iterative process where people came in and talked to us about what was working, what wasn't. We listened to business. We changed the original legislation dramatically. So that's what this is about, is that if people have a livable wage and they can live within the city, they're going to be able to spend money on local businesses. They're better off. We're all better off.
And Sam, I think this concept that Sally is talking about when it comes to making Seattle more affordable is actually something you agree on, at least in principle here. But in terms of how you would make some changes here to make Seattle a better place to live, a more affordable place to live, can you tell us about some ideas you have there, please?
Yeah, I kind of feel like this dialogue is kind of a waste of time. Let's talk about the real issue with our city and how much money it's spending. We're talking about $120,000 a year that they get. They're building an arena, $200 million of taxpayer dollars are going into this arena. We're building a tunnel to nowhere that if they raise the fees too high, it goes on the surface streets. Too low, we can't pay it off. Who are we building it for? We're just destroying our city slowly by slowly. We did get rid of Yesler Terrace, and that was a place we could have built affordable housing. Instead, we gave it to developers and prices are raising. Let's talk about the structure that is occurring and the reason why people can't live in Seattle. It's because our aristocrats, they're big mafia. They control the dialogue. You control the dialogue by asking these questions. The newspapers control the dialogue by omitting people's names. We have the council controlling the dialogue by presetting the agenda. The only way we can fix the situation we're in is by creating the dialogue. A $15-hour wage isn't going to change anything because we need to put a cap on wages then, because the prices will just go up. Those discussions happen after we figure out what we've done. You're failed to repeat the past if you don't recognize your screw-ups.
Fair enough. I'm trying to give as much of a forum as I can to you, Sam, in terms of talking about some programs you'd like to enact. I hear what you're saying about Yesler Terrace. I know that Sally's been talking about trying to raise the minimum wage potentially here in the city of Seattle. Do you have any other thoughts there? Is basically where I was going with that.
Well, I know what the problem. Why can't we have a real dialogue? Why do we have $120,000 a year for Seattle Council?
Fair question, and maybe we can engage this right now.
Though.
Okay,
yeah.
Sally, let's talk about this.
Sure.
We're talking about minimum wage. I know it's difficult for some people to understand how you can relate to them if you're making that amount of money and they're not.
Sure.
What do you say to that?
Well, let's start off by something that Sam doesn't know, which is I worked my way through high school, through college, and through law school. I worked.
At Harvard or Yale? Which one did you go to? I can't remember.
I went to undergraduate at Stanford.
Stanford, there we
Right.
go. Thank you.
Okay.
But I worked my way through law school at the University of Idaho. The reason why the city council is paid, in my case, $117,000.
Almost there, though.
Is because it's set by law. And if you should win this position, you too will be making $120,000 next year.
And you could go ahead. I want a rebuttal. Sorry.
Right.
Okay.
No,
Sure.
but Sam, what you don't know, and you've never asked me either, is how much of that money did I give away last year? How much to nonprofits? How much to individuals who needed it?
Tell the people.
$50,000.
You get $50,000 back.
Yeah.
Because your husband makes $200,000?
No, Sam, you're wrong on that too.
Yeah.
My husband is a constitutional lawyer, and he has given pro bono away for years. In one case, $400,000 that he wrote off, and he didn't get a penny.
He could write off $400,000. I don't know of an average citizen that can write off $400,000.
Because I am making the $117,000.
You get away with $50,000.
That's
you
good.
Made
So
$60,000.
That's right, and we were able to live on that. And I'm proud of it, Sam.
Yeah.
And you'll get that kind of money too
I won't.
if you were elected.
I will give it all away until $40,000.
You'll
But my other,
hang on. You'll give all your
I will give it back to activist organizations. Not all of it. No, I need to live, of course. $40,000. I want to live on the median
You would hang on to
income.
$40,000. Okay.
But the point I'm trying to bring up is you don't have to make that much the second term or the third term. You can write, the law changes every term. You just can't decrease it. Constitution in Washington State only says you can't decrease it while in office. So you're playing two sides of the fence. You still can reduce it.
Okay.
Correct? Oh, and then one other question. The mayor
Sure.
makes $171,000. Our executive branch of a city, our governor makes $170,000. Why is he making $11,000 more when the governor oversees $6 million? He sees $600,000. Why are we allowing that?
But let's look at what we can do and do together with
Okay.
people. I think that the salary issue is such a red herring. I mean, really, what I want to be doing is making sure that we are connecting, because we are interconnected in the city.
Okay.
And for us to get things done, it means we need to work with labor, we need to work with business, we need to work in the environmental community to solve the problems.
Okay.
You know, it's easy to yell, but how recently has it been that you have had a productive conversation with somebody who is yelling at you?
Okay.
And that's just not a style of mine.
Fair enough. If I may, let's try to move on to some of the different issues here, and I think we can have a good conversation about it. Specifically, I think this micro-housing piece that you brought up, I know I've heard it from a number of different people. Sam, let me talk about this with you. Do you think this concept of trying to move towards these smaller units or whatever else can help with this idea of making Seattle a more livable place?
That's increasing our square footage price. You got the micro-housing, which only a single person can live in. Families are getting pushed out. I lived on Capitol Hill. Rent went from $1,150 to $1,275, and now it's $1,400. Had to move out of the Hill. All my friends are calling it Condo Hill now. It's not Capitol Hill. We've just lost the Electric Tea Garden. We've lost several other bars I can't remember. We're losing the Canterbury. We're losing the identity of Capitol Hill, and we want to talk about micro-housing. I don't think solving the issue of talking about micro-housing is going to solve any of the issues. The community has no inlet. Developers are coming in and shaping what Seattle is going to look like. We're turning into a box city. We used to be a community-oriented city, and now we have to say, well, what are you going to do for legislation for the micro-housing? Well, what does the community want? Well, let's go into the community and say, how do you want to see your neighborhood grow? Because it will grow.
Yep.
We're turning into a larger and larger city as Amazon makes more money and we bring in younger and younger people that want to start families.
Sure.
But what about all the working class people?
Yeah.
They're getting forced out.
Well,
and
Sally,
as you lower the square foot prices go up for the larger places.
Yeah. Now, certainly true. And Sal, you're hearing a few of these different points here, and I think we're starting to engage here a little bit, which is great, just in talking about how these types of micro units can affect a neighborhood here. I think there's some issues of safety that people have brought up. I think there's some issues of cost there, and that whole issue of neighborhood character. There's been a lot of pushback from different neighborhoods. How do you respond to that?
We go to the neighborhoods and we talk with the neighbors to say, what does that look like? Because people really resent change if they've been in a single family neighborhood. But what we know is that over 100,000 people are going to be moving into the city of Seattle in the next less than a decade.
Yeah.
Millions are coming in the region, and we have to make room for them. There are neighborhood plans, and what we need to do is enact those plans.
Okay.
But it's going to require lots of things. I mean, Sam's heard me say many times before, there's no silver bullet, but there's silver buckshot.
Okay.
That means the micro-housing is one way of doing it, but we're going to have to deal with design review, so neighbors have an opportunity to say, what do they want? But at the same time, these are not bad people that are coming back to our neighborhoods. These are our kids and our grandkids. We want them here. So I think what Alan Durning has suggested in Unlocking Home, his new book, is to say, you know, micro-housing is a part of it, but so are roommates, so are having multiple families in single-family neighborhoods.
Yeah.
It's something we're going to have to look at.
Okay. I want to talk about another neighborhood. We'll move off the hill and into South Lake Union,
Yeah.
because I know Sam's talked about this a lot. You have too. In terms of what's going on there, a lot of businesses are moving in. The city has some incentives put in place to create some more affordable housing, among other things. But even by city standards, we're way off the mark for what we're going to need for affordable housing there. So I'm just trying to figure out, this plan at SLU, does it really match up with your goal of helping everyone, not just developers, be better off?
Right. In and of itself, no. But we also have 1,200 affordable housing units, that's below 60%, that we have brought in as part of the housing levy. That is a pretty big number. Even if we get all of the affordable housing that we looked at as part of the South Lake Union effort, that's only maybe 700 or 800 more over a decade, and that's not anywhere near enough. We've got some great opportunities. You know, Dick Hadarine is looking at building a mega hotel at the old Greyhound station.
Yeah.
He has 160 units of low-income affordable housing attached to that hotel plan, which will be available in many cases for the people who are actually working in the hotel. That's the kind of real innovation that we need to be encouraging in the city.
And Sam, I know you said it at a recent candidates forum. If you want affordable housing, build it. Let's do it. I know you were saying a few words like that. How do you do that? Who will build it? How do you pay for it? What are your thoughts about South Lake Union and what needs to happen there?
Well, Stand Up America, my organization, can do it. They already gave $200 million to an arena. Give us $200 million, we'll build it.
Okay.
They sold Yesler Terrace off, like I said before. They're getting rid of the... Seattle Housing Authority director makes $200,000 a year. This money is supposed to be federal money going in and helping the homeless and the people that need homes. And working class too. 80% of AMI people also get vouchers. So we're not using the money appropriately. We have billions of dollars. We have 25% of the world's GDP. Seattle's doing well. Well, the people that are doing well are doing well. We have a lot of corporations that are doing extremely well. We have the resources that we could build and maintain. Why did we sell off the Yesler Terrace instead of building each part and renovating them into... in the 1950s, when we built the Housing Authority, everyone in the United States was emulating us, saying, these guys are doing the right stuff, let's do that. Now everyone's like, well, Seattle's selling them off, let's just give all the corporations and allow the developers to set the prices. I mean, right now, we used to have about 40% AMI living there. When the new condos go in, 80% AMI. So where's the low working class gonna go? And they're gonna have like 14 less families moving in after the development.
Okay.
So as the population grows and they finish the development, we're gonna have less spaces for them. And we're also gonna have higher AMI instead of having the low AMI that used to be there.
Sally, can you respond to that Yesler Terrace piece? Because I think there's some
a
pieces
disconnect.
you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we worked on Yesler Terrace for over a year. Sam's wrong that it's a giveaway. The Seattle Housing Authority will be rebuilding all of the low income, and everybody who is there now has a choice to come back. They're being cared for. They got to choose where they wanted to move. Every single family was approached in a way that I thought was really appropriate. They had people speaking the family's language. They reached out family by family to say, where do you want to be? Where do you want to go? So the affordable housing that was there was falling apart. It was 70 years old. It was in disarray. It was going to cost way more simply to renovate than to replace. And it's going to be replaced in a park-like setting that'll be open to everybody. So now we've got transit coming up. You know that the streetcar will be passing right by. We have one of the best grade schools, elementary schools in the area that are dealing with the kids and those families. The family wants to come back because we've got Seattle Public Schools and Seattle University working to really assist the children that are living there. I think that's great. It's the kind of collaboration that I'm proud of in the city.
I'm going to try to squeeze in. Oh, what did
But
you want
the
to say? Sam,
collaboration
please?
part is the problem I have with Yusuf Kadalbi resigned as a commissioner. He lived there and he had family members. He resigned because the housing authority wasn't doing their job right. And I have people coming and complain to me because I'm the only voice they have. They tried reaching your office. And they also tried reaching several of the council members. They CC'd me in the emails telling me, why aren't they answering us? Why are they not listening to us? She's proud of it, then she can be proud of the disaster that Yesler Terrace became.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens with Yesler Terrace. I know it's still under development. I'm wondering if we can sneak in one more issue here, Sam, when it comes to public safety. A lot of candidates talking about this. In terms of the path, the SPD is going down right now, the police department, towards some police reform. Going the right way, wrong way? What are your thoughts about what's going on and some plans for the future?
Well, I mean, right now, Seattle has a bad reputation only because the city council hasn't facilitated the dialogue. Like I said, the protesters were in the street. They brought in horseback and they brought in bicycle cops and cops in vehicles. Why didn't they bring the protesters and the cops in there? I actually sat in on an endorsement meeting with the police, and they brought up the anarchists. But the view the anarchists have of the police is the same view that the police have of the anarchists. They both negatively have an opinion. So why don't they just bring back both sides into the table and have a discussion around that?
Okay.
That's how we solve things. We solve it as a community. Right now we're solving it as a project in school that we have to analyze and give a report on. That's not how you treat a community, especially Seattle, since we're so close knit.
Quickly, Sal, if you wouldn't mind talking about the process SPD is going through right now.
I think that Sam has been misinformed. The program that the police has brought in the community. We have a community stakeholders group that's part of it. The police are working on really reaching out to the various neighborhoods. And if you talk to the precinct captains, what they have done in going into the school, looking at the neighborhood leaders, once again, they're trying to do their very best. Neighborhoods are reaching back to the police. I think we're making progress. And then we've got the new monitor. The Department of Justice is overseeing this whole program. It's going to take time. We are actually on the right track.
Okay. I need to wrap up here. And Sam, if you can take a minute, please, tell people why you're the best candidate for this job.
Yeah, I mean, you just heard her say that everything's going well, that they've connected with communities, the police captains are talking with community members. But what about the people they're not touching? Those are the people that need a voice. What about the people that don't have their concerns heard in Yesler Terrace? What about the people that are struggling? It is her friends and the aristocrats and the bureaucrats and the mafia that we have as a government that is doing well. The average citizen isn't. And to deny that is to you be a 1% or at least a friend of one, because you're a part of that problem. We need to stand up and work together. We need to vote for Sam Bellimio or just get a citizen in there. Stop this aristocratic cycle that we're in America with allowing these big bureaucrats to destroy our nation.
All right. Thank you very much, Sally.
I, too, am a citizen. And to me, what we need is to create the caring community. And that's something that I've been working on for 35 years. As a lawyer, as a community activist, a volunteer, and a mom. And I believe that we have a long way to go. It's not like I believe for 1 second that we don't have problems, but focusing on affordable housing, on transit, on our economy so that people have a living wage job, to make our parks as sustainable as possible so everyone has a place to go. This is the kind of caring community that we can create together. And I'm Sally Bagshaw. I appreciate your support, and I ask for your vote.
Thank you both very much for your time, and we will be right back.
I think the city council should focus on the transportation issue.
Definitely increase bike safety.
Cleaning up the downtown.
The priority of the city should be the homeless.
I think she should focus on stuff that's important, like police protection. Some of the arts and other stuff is not a priority.
We'd like to know what you think. Send us an email at contact@seattlechannel.org or find us on Facebook and Twitter and give us your feedback.
Before we close today, it's time for our weekly CIO poll. Who do you plan to vote for on the Seattle City Council? Incumbent Sally Bagshaw, challenger Sam Bellimio, or are you undecided? We want to know what you think. Cast your vote and send us your comments at our website, seattlechannel.org/cityinsideout. While you're there, you can watch our programs online anytime. Coming up next week, City Council incumbent Nick Licata faces off with challenger Edwin Fruit of the Socialist Workers' Party. Will voters give Licata a 5th term? Our election coverage continues next time on City Inside Out. I hope you join us.